Hello, good morning, Max. Darren Finnegan here from 3D Physio, and I'm here joined with Max Roberts from Maximum Fitness over in Killingworth. Good morning, Max.
Morning, Darren. How you doing, mate?
All good in the hood, sir. So, we're going to jump on, and we're going to kind of kick back and chat about the concept of general physical preparedness. Do you like it?
I love it. Throw me in.
So for the kind of listeners, what we're going to be looking at is going to be talking about basic concepts of physical preparedness. So that means, in my opinion, and kind of from a physio perspective, you see it all the time, people want to be able to kind of say, go for a run, 5-10K run, and that's your endurance capacity, okay? Or kind of longer if you want. But then the concept is about people should have the endurance, they should have a certain degree of flexibility, should have a certain degree of strength when it comes to lifting weights or exercising, and they should be able to do the basic concepts, kind of almost like a CrossFit principle, do a pull-up, lift their body weight in a squat or a deadlift, be able to run the length of themselves. And it's a case of the human body is adaptable, and you need to be able to do all these different things, and developing a robust, resilient, adaptable body is the goal. Because unless you're competing at a high level, bodybuilding in Max's case, or you're kind of weightlifting and you're training specifically for something, that's excellent, and I admire that. But then it's opening up kind of wider and thinking about, am I just training for life?
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Yeah.
So have you heard of that kind of concept before about general physical preparedness?
I would say I've heard a little bit more so through the CrossFit side of things. Like the desire to be able to do, pretty much everything. I've never heard it put into the words of physical fitness, prepared fitness, whatever you mentioned it. But no, I definitely think it's something it's always going to add value when you're able to do multiple different things.
Max, we lost you there, my man. Oh, hello, Max. Oh, we're having some technical difficulties here, listeners. Sorry about that. Okay.
Am I back in the room?
You're back in business, my man.
But yeah, I was saying, I think, it's good to be good at everything. I really try and encourage a lot of my clients and my members to, focus on not just one area, but a multitude of different areas. Mm-hmm. Simply just because it opens a lot more doors to be able to enjoy a lot more different things. If you just focus on one thing, you get really good at that, brilliant. But, say if you're, I don't know, say if you're a real muscle-bound bodybuilder and you've got lack of flexibility and lack of endurance, and your friends want to go to Go Ape, and you're unable to, pull yourself up and climb around, then you're going to miss out on a lot of fun, really. So I think it's always good whenever you're focusing on your training to try and apply, lots of different levels of fitness challenges and areas of intensities to enable you to pretty much have a little bit more freedom in the physical side of life.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of now it's quite prevalent as well. If you think that all the gyms have closed and whatever else, and then people have suddenly said, oh, well, I can't lift weights, I'll go for a run. And you see some people out there and you know that they're not normal runners. And you can see.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking recently, it's like, and this is kind of thinking in the future that potentially some of these people will be developing tendinopathies or certain types of injuries because they're really trying to apply their normal training load of exercising 5-6 times a week, but they're trying to incorporate maybe a couple of cycles, maybe a couple of runs, and that's completely alien to them. And then there's a learning kind of point as well. That we have to kind of understand the principles of like load management.
Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes ego is what gets in the way there, isn't it? Like if you're someone who's used to really pushing yourself really, really intensely, and then suddenly you're not able to do what you'd focus on doing. You're like, right, I'm going to go for a run, but I'm not going to do a 1K run. I'm going to do a 10K run. Yeah. And, I think, yeah, you're definitely right. You kind of need to sometimes less is more. Like I often say to my clients, you don't, it is great to push to the extreme, and there's always a time and a place for it. But quite often to push to the extreme, it's a case of just building it up a little bit at the start before just going for gold and diving in the deep end, unless you want to risk, getting an injury. You could be one of the lucky folk and not get one. There's some people I see in the gym, sometimes not my gym, but when you go into a commercial gym, the way you got these big boys, and they're in phenomenal shape, but the way that they throw the weights around is just like, I'm so shocked that they've not got shoulder injuries and that they're broken. But I guess they're just genetic freaks that they can look at weights and just adapt. But you could be one of the lucky people, I guess. But most people aren't the lucky ones, really, I suppose, are they? So, not in England, anyway. Yeah, we're not blessed with the best genetics.
So kind of, you mentioned there, obviously, the ego, and kind of the ego is a huge player in all this. In terms of how does Max Robert keep his ego in check?
Well, for being a battle, mate, sometimes it goes a bit wild. Do you know what it is, man? I think a lot of it, it's funny, man, because you think you know yourself, and you think each year you're like, I've nailed it. I'm a much better version of myself. And then a year later, you look back and you're like, didn't have a clue then. So I guess, like many people, I'll definitely have an ego on some level. I try massively to minimize it and not get ahead of myself. I mean, I'm an only child. I was raised on praise. Yeah. I've really had to learn to not overvalue positive feedback. So I try to I think when you overvalue positive feedback, it makes it very, very difficult to take the negatives. Yeah. And, if you can, what I'm trying to say is, the less I've craved the approval of others, the easier it's been to control my ego, because it's not about trying to impress people anymore. It's just about me trying to do it for me. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And kind of, because we were talking before how you recently kind of started doing jiu-jitsu, and I always, if we're looking at that kind of physical preparedness kind of side of things, I always think that in a physical measure, something like jiu-jitsu is definitely an ego kind of like killer. Because
yeah, for sure. That's been a really humbling thing, because I am strong especially for my size and stuff, and it's not often that I ever feel physically. I feel like I could always handle my own from a physical strength point of view against other folks. And when I was going to jiu-jitsu for the first few times, I'd gone in and I knew that I didn't know what I was doing. So, and I was self-aware enough to not let my ego run wild, because I think you learn very early on in martial arts, if you go into a martial arts place for the first time and you've got an ego, you're going to get your ass whooped. And I was rolling with these boys, and they were just, they were just absolutely annihilating me. And, I was way physically stronger than them, but the way that they were moving and channeling my strength, I was my own worst enemy. So jiu-jitsu is a really, really humbling thing, because you lose more than you win. And a lot of the time, I think the large majority of us only take part in the things that we think we're going to win, or don't take part at all.
Yeah.
So jiu-jitsu is a really, really great sport for becoming more humble, because you actually learn to lose more, and the more you lose, the better you become, because you learn how not to do it. So it really, really teaches loss. I mean, I've always been quite good at embracing loss from an adult age, not from when I was a kid. I really struggled to lose. But yeah, jiu-jitsu is good for that. Have you done any sort of martial arts like that then, Darren?
No, so kind of interestingly enough, so I spent a bit of time once I was in Dublin working with some mixed martial artists from Straight Blast Gym, the Conor McGregor's gym and John Kavanagh's gym.
Oh, sweet, man.
And so it was pretty cool.
Casually drop that in there, yeah, Conor McGregor's gym. Yeah.
It was pretty cool. Because, one of the times I was doing a work with a girl called Danny Nealon, who's now a pro fighter and has won a couple of her first pro fights. And then she went on to kind of get silver in the World Amateur MMA Championships over in Bahrain a few years ago. Wow. So it was pretty cool, because she'd phone me up and be like, Darren, I can't do this move. And I'd be like, I have no fucking idea what a Granby roll is. So I'd jump on Google, I'd go down to the local park, and because I'm quite introspective and I'm a kind of kinesthetic learner, I'd roll around in the kind of local park looking like an absolute complete freak, trying to figure out what a Granby roll is. And I'd eventually kind of figure it out. And then I'd put myself in a weird way, kind of put myself in her body and her movement patterns. So I'd know where she would be getting stuck. And then I'd go in and kind of teach her how to do it in a kind of jiu-jitsu setting.
Wow, that's crazy. That's like some Matrix mindset there, bro. That's amazing.
So
Are you dyslexic?
No.
You're not?
No.
It's like a dyslexic brain sort of way of thinking, you know what I mean?
I had to kind of I had to process it, and I had to get inside her. And I recommend, and I suggest this for any physio who has someone coming in, and try and get in, think and move, and almost get yourself in the positions that the person is in pain and holding, so you can kind of feel and understand the discomforts that they're going through. So then that way you can kind of deconstruct it down to make them get better. Mm-hmm. But it was quite interesting with her, because then I'd go into the straight blast gym and see this broken down, and then she'd apply it in practice straight away. And one day, lucky enough, it'll probably be one of my highlights of my career is I was there and they closed down the gym. The only people in the gym were the godfathers of Irish MMA. Conor McGregor was there, Dylan Dennis, who they'd spent a few $100,000 bringing over to teach and spar with McGregor. Then there was Paddy Hoolan, who's a legend of MMA world that I've met a few times. And I think there was one other person that was there just watching. And it was just me with these 10 world.
In the corner crying with joy.
And it was interesting because I didn't give McGregor any attention. I was completely focused on the athlete I was working with.
How did he cope with that?
He could see the visible nervousness in him because I wasn't giving him any attention. He was kind of constantly just fucking eyeing me out of and kept on anytime he turned around, kind of he'd walk almost pace back and forth across me, looking for me to react or say something. And I was like, I'm not starstruck by you. I'm just here focusing on the person I'm working with. This is my goal. And in fairness, actually, I was more intrigued looking at the jiu-jitsu side and looking at John Kavanagh, who is a Jedi mind, or a Yoda style Jedi when it comes to tricks, because he was there at one stage coordinating these 10, 12 top class athletes, whilst also kind of on his back and manipulating someone else into a position that he was going to then take advantage of. And then he had an arm bar 10 seconds later. And
is he a black belt in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, he's a self-taught black belt in jiu-jitsu.
What? That's mental, man. So, I mean, yeah. Do you know, it's mad when you go to jiu-jitsu. I mean, I've not rolled with any black belts, but when you roll with a purple belt, I mean, they're good.
Yeah.
So to be a black belt, man, in jiu-jitsu is hard, man. That's long dedication. It's definitely one of my personal goals. I would love to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I mean, I already feel like I've learned so much just being a white belt, so I can't imagine the wealth of knowledge you'd have from being a black belt. But I think martial arts really does change you, man. There's a type of person who does martial arts, and you almost, I suppose, you become your surroundings. But everyone I've noticed that the more I boxed for a long time, and the caliber of person in boxing in comparison to jiu-jitsu is entirely different. And I've done kickboxing and karate, and I noticed that as the martial art got harder, the more humble and gracious the character of the person was. No disrespect to boxing. Boxing served me so much purpose and I love it. And, I met some amazing people during it, but it's predominantly ego and alpha male dominated. Yeah. And then when you go to jiu-jitsu, it's alpha male dominated in a really non-passive aggressive, non-aggressive way. You'll get submitted and tapped out, and as soon as someone's tapped you out, they'll be rather than being enraged with adrenaline ready to tear your head off again, they'll be like, wow, you did really good there, but what you needed to do was this, and they've just told you they've just told you where you've gone wrong and how you can beat them next time. Whereas in boxing, you know, it's a case of you're in a fight, you're just gonna.
And that's people give mixed martial arts such bad press as well, because obviously there is an aggressive and quite like violent nature to it. But like people don't see the dedication and time and the art form when it comes into kind of like ground grappling and your kind of jiu-jitsu skills. And I think in its primitive form of MMA, like that is the best example of general physical preparedness, because they need to obviously be very good on the back. They need to be able to throw punches. They need to have cardio fitness. They need to have really good flexibility. They need to have kind of like their like energy systems have to be on top notch. And like and then they can either be a specialist in wrestling or a specialist in jiu-jitsu or boxing or striking. And there's so much depth to it that to kind of be physically prepared in all these realms, it's a wonderful.
You always need a few lifetimes to do it.
Yeah, and this is kind of one of the skills, or one of the kind of things that I did do with Danny once I was working with her. I kind of went through and said, right, well, where are your strengths? And kind of almost did like a bit of a SWOT analysis of her as a fighter, and then her fitness. So we kind of broke down the fitness, and I kind of literally wrote it down on a sheet and was like, here, endurance wise, how do you feel your endurance is? In terms of strength wise, where do you feel your strength is? Then kind of in terms of the kind of stamina, so kind of cardiovascular system, in terms of kind of just going flat out kind of for 30 seconds, a minute or 2 minutes in a round, does she feel like she can cope with that? And then there was kind of, I think we did like speed and then explosive power as well. And we kind of broke all and then mindset as well came into it, obviously. And this is something that I kind of tend to use with a lot of athletes, or kind of a lot of people coming back. And if they have a certain injury, and you can rehab that injury, but with a focus on working on their weakness. So if someone comes in and says they lack the speed when they're sprinting, but they come in with a hamstring injury, you can obviously make your exercises kind of a bit faster paced, so they get that kind of fast twitch, and they work that hamstring in a more fast twitch specific way, because that's how they're going to need to use that muscle when they get back running. And kind of, so we did it anyway, wrote down a couple of things, and I said, right, write them out of 5 where your strength is. 5 is the strongest, 1 is where we need to work on. And we just kind of went through it. And then it's like, right, all the exercises, it comes down to when anyone gives you an exercise, because she was seeing, she had a strength conditioning coach at the time, personal trainer, and then a nutritionist side of things. And then we kind of broke it down, and I said, right, anytime anyone gives you any exercise or does anything with you, ask, what is the purpose of this?
Yeah, that's really important. That's something that I always, when I was working in commercial gyms and I would be training with other PTs and stuff, it's very rare I would always kind of take lead, I guess. I feel like I was very, very, very fortunate to have had a really, really good mentor who really ingrained proper training principles and proper understanding. You know, like there was 3 guys who I worked with at Virgin Active, Ian, Johnny, and Chris Chapman, and they really just, you know, if you do an exercise, they'd be like, why are you doing that exercise? And I'm like, oh, well, because it's good for this year, but why are you doing that? Like, is that the most beneficial exercise? Maybe it's not. Like, are you doing it for, you know, when you see guys in the gym doing the cable curls in the mirror, that's just a vanity exercise. So what happens when you get fatigued, your elbows start coming in, you're not really doing a bicep curl anymore. And, you know, they were like, it really challenged what the purpose of what you were trying to achieve was, which a lot of people don't. They just train what looks good in the mirror, or what, you know, makes you feel good. And it is important to do stuff that makes you feel good, but if you're going to put a lot of time and effort into your exercise, you want to make sure you do it properly so you can actually get the benefits.
That's kind of I'd advise everyone to kind of go in and with the whole COVID side of things, I think it's given us a great opportunity to go in and actually break down everything that we're doing, what is the purpose of you going to the gym? Do you enjoy it? Actually, now that you're out running, getting exercising outdoors, maybe cycling for a lot of people, it's a case of that's a really good trait to do. I think a lot of people do need to spend a bit of time at some stage, either going for a walk, a hike, cycle, or some exercise outside, because the benefits are huge. Not just from a vitamin D perspective, but just getting out in nature is going to pay back.
Your mind, man. I think it triggers like a part of your brain, which, you know, like climbing to the top of a mountain just has some kind of, like, I don't know whether it's triggering a past ancestors' genetics, or, you know, like, I don't know. I just feel like when you climb a mountain or you do something like that, that achievement that you've had it's just I can't express it. It's an endorphin that you can only get from doing that kind of stuff. You know, like when you're surfing, the catching a big wave, you can only get that adrenaline rush and that endorphin from that sort of thing. Like for me personally, you know, each different element that you spend outside has a different feel and a different almost endorphin experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like the feeling you get from being on the beach as opposed to climbing that mountain, it's different. And it's yeah, I love it. So I've done a fair bit of hiking and trekking, and I've spent a month in Nepal before, a few years ago. Closest I've ever been to dying, but that's
no way.
So it was a case of we're doing Annapurna base camp, which is technically a little bit more difficult than Everest, but it doesn't have the same altitude problems as such. So kind of we went up a little backpack. I was there, had met a couple other guys, Irish and American, earlier on in the trip. And we did the kind of hike, but I was in a bit of a rush doing it. And it was meant to take 10 days, but the lads had to do it in 5 days because they had to get back to work and stuff. So we kind of rushed it through anyway, had a bit of money. It didn't account for the expensive mountain pass. So I only had enough money for like one meal a day, and I bought a load of lollipops to kind of give me a little bit of a kick if I had a lull, which was pretty wild. Got to base camp got to the lodge before base camp. 10 of us set off at like 2 a.m. Snow blizzard. The main path was covered over. It was snowing all the day before, and it should have taken an hour and a half hike. Within 45 minutes, the Sherpas that were with the other group, they all turned back and they said, we're going back. We can't find the path. And then me, another Irish guy, and an American guy were like, fuck that, I'm going. And so it was literally waist deep snow in me. And I'm 6'3", so waist deep snow, and we're there trudging along in this kind of snow, and just absolutely just freezing, just angry and just frustrated, and then kept on going anyway. And then you've seen this like beautiful sunrise here, like this like Himalayan mountain range, all these 8 peaks, and it was just like this euphoric. There's something raw about this that I can't put it into words. I don't know.
Wow.
Went to take a picture, and then obviously, as you do, the phone wouldn't work because it was that cold. Went to take out the camera, wouldn't work as well. It was that cold, and then I was like, "Oh shit! I'll stop for a water break." Water was frozen solid in the 2 bottles that I had, and we're like, "Oh." I was like, this is the end here. We're like, we should be
cool place to die.
We should be at the base camp here. This is like an hour and a half, 2 hours into what should have been an hour and a half hike. And we couldn't see any sign of the base camp at all. And we're like, this is the end. And it was funny because I had a lull at one stage, and then the Irish lad put me around, and then we trucked on again, and I seen him, he just hit a wall as well. And then I kind of pulled him along. And then the kind of most beautiful thing was that we went up and we seen like what we thought were dog prints in the foreground. And we're like, class, we're at the base camp now. There's dog prints there. There must be dogs up at base camp. Got up, obviously got a cup of coffee, kind of hovered around a fire and warmed up when we got to the base camp, and just beautiful kind of scenery. And then we asked one of the Nepalese people that were up at base and said, oh, where's the dogs? And they're like,
are they wolves?
What are you talking about? There's no dogs up here. Don't be silly. and we were like, oh, we've seen dog prints, and they were like, no, they were snow leopard prints. We were like, ooh. And so it was just like one of them.
Jesus.
It was just a beautiful, majestic moment. And if anyone has ever seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty,
Yeah. Great film.
there's a scene in it at the very end where the guy is a wildlife photographer, and he just goes to take a picture of a snow leopard, and all the kind of movie builds up this moment. And then he's at the point after camping out, and he doesn't take the shot.
Do you know what it is? I was just about to say, you know, when you were talking about being at the top of the mountain, getting your phone out, trying to take a photo, you know, sometimes you don't have to take the picture, man. Like, I think it can take you out. I've done this so many times, and I try actually to stop myself at times. You know, when you're having an amazing moment or something, you kind of stop that moment in preparation to try and get your phone out and take a picture, and sometimes you end up taking yourself out of that sort of I don't want to call it spiritual experience of just nothing.
The appreciation, like if you need to jump straight to your camera, you lose that just connection with that moment. But I thought it was just beautiful, because it was like, you know, in retrospect, I tried to take the picture, but the fact I couldn't means that memory it's lived it's my memory.
Yeah, exactly, man. Too right, man. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great to have the photos and stuff, and don't get me wrong, like, I definitely take a lot, but there's a lot of times where I just don't even bother to get my phone out, because I'm just like, yeah, I hate my phone sometimes, man.
Yeah,
I really hate the I don't know, it's such a distraction. It can just take you away from reality sometimes, can't it?
Yeah, and I highly recommend as well, people, you know, everyone's kind of obsessed now a lot of the time with kind of tracking data, or kind of tracking your run or your cycle or your weights, and that is absolutely brilliant. But I do see a kind of downside of that, where sometimes people can get too obsessive with kind of tracking measures, data, and running, whatever. I went for a run last year with a mate of mine down in London, after we'd been out for a few beers the night before. I was like, we're not going to be doing any PBs here. Leave your watch at home. Like, we're going for a 5K run, and we're going to probably go for a coffee. It's like, leave your watch at home. You don't need your Garmin to track this run.
Yeah, for sure, man. I don't really. The only thing I ever track is my workouts. But like, yeah. I don't really. I've got an Apple Watch, but I don't use it too much. I track my MyFitnessPal, my food, and I track the weights that I've lifted, just so I've got a specific target. But I've never really been one for being that obsessive about, you know, the calorie burn and the steps and I mean, I do track my steps.
Yeah.
But none of these things prevent me from actually doing what it is that I'm supposed to do. Because sometimes I think you were going with that, which is true. The Garmin becomes more important than the actual experience of the run.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it for the data rather than doing it for the actual physical benefits or for the experience of whatever it is that you're doing. We're doing it to see what we've achieved on the screen.
And sometimes that is relevant. And I personally like running. So I for years didn't have a Garmin, and then someone had asked me, oh, how far did you run? I was like, you know, I was enjoying it, so I ran further. And an hour later, I was still enjoying it, so I ran further. And it was kind of almost, I'm starting to train for these events and rat race in September, hopefully, if it goes ahead, which is a 105-mile race. And I realized, shit, I need to track this data, because otherwise I'm just going to get injured.
Yeah, I mean, tracking is important, definitely. I mean, like, but again, tracking's going a little. I think there's a baseline of tracking that's important, you know. So like, tracking what you're eating is super important. The amount of people who post videos on, you know, Instagram of what they're eating, and I know that if they were to have tracked that in the MyFitnessPal, they would not have a portion size that big, because they would get a serious shock. You know? So I think it is important to track that. I think steps is a good one, just because it's a little accountability. You know, it lets you kind of know how much Oh, brilliant. My coffee's arrived.
Oh,
Thank you.
hey, Laura.
Service. The best. The best. I think it's good to track your steps because, it's a discipline. So some of the tracking things are important because it's part of the discipline of achieving the goal. But like I've worked out with people before where they get to the end of the workout and the watch hasn't been on, and they're like, "Oh God, that was pointless!" Like they're really wound up and fed up at the fact that the watch, didn't track the workout, and that doesn't really, on the grand scheme of things, matter because what it was about you actually physically working out. Whether it says you did or you didn't on your watch doesn't really matter, as long as you got the job done with the intensity that it needed to be,
Exactly.
done.
Yeah.
There's always next time, I say to people as well, like each workout's important, but one workout doesn't always make the biggest difference, in the sense of like, if you have one bad workout, it doesn't matter. It's like if you've got white teeth and one day you don't brush your teeth as well as you did the other day, they're not going to suddenly be yellow.
Yeah. It's the kind of compound effect. It's kind of the compound interest of each day just doing a little bit and getting a little bit better each day. If you have them days where you don't, it's okay. So circling back to kind of that, so talking about like the physical side of things of training and being prepared for any situation. So I'm going to put this is my perception of what I feel is an indicator that someone has a good general level of fitness. So the ability to kind of go in and squat their body weight, I think should be a basic indicator. And it's one of the most functional moves. If people kind of are out there listening, make sure that you nail your squat, and kind of, if you can't squat, definitely go in and kind of find some advice or some guidance with how to improve it. Because it was interesting with Danny, when I initially seen her, she had a previous hip fracture, the MMA athlete. And when she squatted, she was squatting way off center. She was about like, almost 65% on one side, which was her good side. She was shifting her center of gravity away from where she'd previously hurt her hip and fractured her hip. And then obviously a little bit of education, a little bit of treatment on the hip, getting it moving a bit better. And then she came back a few weeks later. She's like, "Oh, it's awesome in the octagon, in the cage. I'm not fatiguing after X amount of minutes." I was like, well, that's because you have a better base. You have a more even squat, which is going to obviously transfer across to energy, more energy in the cage, because you're not just overloading one side all the time.
Yeah, sure, man.
So squatting is kind of number one. Deadlift is number two. You should be able to deadlift your own body weight. Pull-ups, obviously, is a good baseline. Can you pull up? And then kind of basic running 5Ks. Everyone should be able to run 5Ks. Everyone should be able to do a bit of swimming. I'm a bit hypocritical on this because I'm a shit swimmer.
You do a bit of it though.
Yeah. But kind of, I think people need to kind of start opening up and saying, right, I want to be a generalist. And there's a good book recently by David Epstein called Range. It's Why Generalists Rule the World. Right. What? And they tell some nice stories about, in terms of Tiger Woods and kind of Roger Federer, and they use kind of Roger Federer as an example. So in terms of, when it comes to Federer, he played every single sport known to mankind when he was a young kid. His mum was a tennis coach. He played basketball, was on the swim team, maybe I think it was baseball, football, and badminton and squash. Mm-hmm. And obviously he dabbled in tennis. And how he went down the tennis rabbit hole is he wasn't pressured or forced into the tennis remit through his mum. But his mum was organising a tennis competition in Switzerland, and she was short a few players. She asked Roger to step in, and obviously her 15-year-old son is not really going to say no when he has the physical capabilities to hold a racket and hit it. So he went on, entered the competition as a bit of a thank, or a gesture to his mum, and went on and won the bloody competition.
No way.
Yeah, and his mum kind of then said to him, was like, "Well, Roger, this is brilliant. Do you want to keep on playing?" And he was like, "Yeah, why not?" And kept on playing a few competitions, and obviously then realized, actually, I'm really talented. But it's because he had we talked previously about emotional vocabulary, where he had the movement vocabulary, because he had all the
Yeah.
different movement patterns that had been learnt over the years through the different sports, and then he was able to refine it and then apply it all to tennis, which is, I think.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, and I think as well, when you do lots of different things, you get more confidence because you recognize that. So, like, say if you do one thing and you just channel all your energy into one thing, progress is fast at the start when you're learning, when you go from zero to something. And then when it starts getting harder, progress becomes slower. So if you're just focusing all your energy in one thing, that progress can be quite slow. So you'll still be getting confidence, but your confidence is massively affected by one, effort level. Am I putting 100% in? If you're putting 100% into something, usually you tend to find that your confidence goes up because there's some knock-on effect anyway. Progress has a massive impact on confidence. When we're progressing in something, we feel more competent in it. When we feel more competent, we feel more confident. And a backlash of more confidence goes to more competence, and so on and so forth. But the slower the progress, to a certain extent, the slower the confidence. But if you've got a multitude of different sports and you're getting little tops of progress in lots of different areas, then suddenly, say you're doing 8 different sports, and you're getting more and more confident on each one and getting better at each one, then I think that has a real big effect on your self-esteem. And a lot of the time, I think the amount of effort you're prepared to put into something is based on your self-esteem. Am I prepared to try really hard? Because what if I get it wrong? What if I don't do well? Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make me any less of a person. Depending on your level of self-esteem, depends on how prepared you are to sometimes put it all in, because of how vulnerable you could be if you don't pull it off.
Some powerful words, but yeah, definitely a huge element of that, and kind of mind blown in terms of kind of them specifics and training specifics, all good and well, but kind of that spreading your kind of bets is a good option as well.
Definitely.
Right. Well, man, we're going to leave it there, I think, for today. Great catch-ups again.
It's been emotional. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing about the Himalayans and nearly getting eaten by a snow leopard. That was great.
Right. Till next time, all the best, people, and hope you enjoyed the show.
Hey.